Welcome to Parent Coaches Unleashed, the podcast where we dive into the highs, lows, and did that really just happen moment of parenting teens and young adults. We're Carrie and Jessica, parent coaches, mythbusters, and occasional referees in the battle of hormones versus common sense.
If you've ever wondered, is this just happening to me? You're not alone. We are here to help you with real talk, expert advice, and hopefully a few laughs along the way. Need more support? We also offer private coaching, workshops, and speaking engagements because sometimes even parents don't have all the answers.
So continue listening as we tackle this parenting journey together.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Parent Coaches Unleashed. Hi, Carrie.
Hi. We're going to do something a little different today.
Yes. So today we have some letters from our listeners who I think present some really interesting teenage scenarios for a lot of people. So we thought it would be great to share them and then provide some feedback.
All right.
You ready to go, Carrie? You want to start with yours?
Yeah, I'll start with the first one.
Okay.
Hi, Jessica and Carrie. I'm a parent of a 15-year-old who used to be outgoing and talkative. Over the past few months, they've withdrawn, spending almost all their time alone in their room with headphones on. We barely talk, and when I try to check in, I get one-word answers or silence. I know teens need space and independence, but this shift feels different, like something deeper might be going on. They're not hanging out with friends, and I rarely see any joy or spark in them anymore. I'm torn between giving space and stepping in. How do I tell what's typical teenage behavior versus a possible mental health concern? And how can I reach them without pushing them away? Thanks for any insight you can share, a concerned parent.
Well, I think the first thing I would say to this parent is you're not alone. I think so many of us who have teens have experienced this at some point or another. Don't forget our teens are going through so many not just emotional and social changes, but truly hormonal changes as well. And I think they're trying to figure things out for themselves as much as we're watching them and trying to figure out what's going on for them as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first piece of advice would be to not panic.
Yes.
And to stay present with your child. Giving them their space and their privacy, but yet still as the parent paying attention to any other future changes that might be happening, right? Because taking a step back for a child and maybe not hanging with friends for a little bit or not engaging in some of the activities that used to give them joy is normal, but it could then, if it goes on for too long or they end up not finding joy in any activity anymore, that could be a cry for help or something that a parent should take note of, that would be a moment that you might want to seek some advice from a therapist or the pediatrician or someone else. But I think normal breaks in changing activities or spending a little bit more time alone is normal. But when it lasts for too long or nothing holds their attention or engages them anymore is a red flag.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And I just want to reiterate something you said, talk a little more about it. Being present, Carrie and I've said this before, you've heard this, just showing up is so much of good parenting, right?
So
Just being
what
there
is
for your
just
kid.
showing
But
up? Like,
well,
let's
that's
just
that's
define,
what
what does it look
I'm
like?
glad you asked.
Yeah. What does that look
So
like?
just showing up and being present, it doesn't mean hovering. It doesn't mean sitting there and asking the same questions in a different way over and over. Funny enough, I do get from my kids, "All right with the questions, enough already. You sound like grandma. Stop asking so many questions." So I actually posed this question to my son the other day, and I said, When you say that to me, what do you mean? Like, what does it look like? What do you think it looks like from a parenting point of view? What do you think you would do differently?" And he actually said, "I just feel like it's the same question over and over. Like, why do you need to know who's there? Why do you need to know what exactly I'm doing?" He said, "Don't you think I'm old enough and independent enough where you don't need to ask the same questions over and over?" And he's right. So being present does not mean asking the same questions over and over. It does not mean hovering. It does not mean, "Are you okay? Are you okay? What's wrong? What did something happen?" Being present, I think, means showing up in a way that is respectful, like Carrie said, of their privacy, but lets them know that you're still open for a conversation. So, for example, it might look like, "Hey, we're playing a card game tonight. Do you want to join us?" Give them the opportunity to know that you're there. Or if you know that they go in for a snack at night, just sit in the kitchen reading a book and say, "Hey, how are you? How's it going? How was your day?" Just little things so that they know that you're there. Often these times of what might appear like isolation are just a phase. It could just be something they're going through, and as long as you let your child know that you will always be there, you're always open and ready to have a conversation with them, that's what they need to know. But again, like Harry said, when these red flags arise, that's when you need to take further action. I think the one thing, I'm not sure if you mentioned this or not, but grades also, if your child was once getting straight A's and B's and then you see them slipping or failing, that might be a time for further intervention as well.
Yep. Changes in sleep, eating,
Yes.
and their hygiene are also signs too that could be red flags if they're no longer, if they're either sleeping too much or talking about, I haven't been sleeping, or I'm having trouble falling asleep, or you notice this. You may not be saying anything, but you might notice like they're staying up all night and then sleeping
Right.
half the day or being late to things. So there are some signs that we could watch for without having to ask the questions. So
Right.
those would be. But
One other
one thing,
thing,
yeah,
I'm
good.
sorry. One other thing I want you to remember is your kids are not doing this to you. This is not some act that they're trying to get back at you. This is something they're going through.
Yeah.
So I think it helps to keep that in mind as well. They're not saying, "Oh, I hate my parents," or "I don't like you anymore." They're saying, "I'm going through something and I need some space to figure it out."
Yeah. And the being present part and just showing up and kind of being around them without having to make conversation or ask the questions could look like, "Hey, I'm, going for a ride to do a couple of errands. You want to come with me?" Or when they're sitting on the couch just scrolling on their phone, maybe sit near them or in the same room and be doing your own thing just so you're there in space, but you don't have to be filling up the space with talk or with questions. You could also make them a little snack and leave a little note on the snack. Um, hey, I'm going for a walk in the park, or, just keep offering little things
Right.
and seeing if maybe they grab onto one. But what I would advise is if they do grab onto one, like let's say you're like, "Hey, I'm going to go do some errands. Would you want to take a ride with me?" Now, in the car, put on music or allow them, "Hey, you want to choose some
Right,
music?"
right.
Don't feel like, "Okay, this is now the moment I got them in the car."
They can't
I'm
go
gonna
anywhere.
have them
They're
start
stuck.
pounding them and asking them questions. Like, this is now just for you to show, "I'm here.
Right.
I'm here." That's it.
it's okay to say, "What do you need from me in this moment?" And you also have to be willing to respect whatever they say. If they say, "I don't need anything from you, I just need my space," you got it. I'm here if you need me.
Yep. Yeah, I think just reassuring when you're ready, I'm here. You've been on my mind. I love you. I'll give you your space, but I'm here when you need. That's it.
Right.
Not what's wrong with you. Do not use those words.
Yes.
Um, I would advise to just, less is more in this moment. It's just consistency, connection. That's it. But like
Yes.
we said
Consistency
before,
and connection. I like those.
to this listener, then if you've tried all of these things and you see that the behaviors are not changing and they are actually getting worse, this would be the time that as the parent, you would want to talk to the pediatrician or whatever doctors you have a connection to and or seek out a therapist. And it is challenging when you're looking for a therapist to then kind of throw this on your child like, oh, I made us an appointment. I'm taking you. It should be meet with the therapist yourselves first
Yeah.
as the parents
Yes.
and then get some guidance as how to now introduce it to the child or to the family. So do that first so you're getting extra support first.
Great. Okay.
All right.
Let's move on
What else
to
we have? I know we have another.
yes. This one really hit home for me because I feel like I've been here. So, okay. Hi, Parent Coaches Unleashed. I'm a dad of a 15-year-old son who plays on a competitive travel baseball team, and I've been struggling with how to handle a situation that happened recently. I've been a longtime listener of your podcast. I appreciate how you both give perspective on these messy moments. I'm hoping you can help me sort through this one. During a tournament last weekend, my son was playing shortstop, and his teammate, who he's played with for years, got frustrated after an error committed by my son and loudly blamed my son in front of the team, the coaches, and the crowd. It was embarrassing for my son, and honestly, it shook his confidence for the rest of the game. Afterward, my son told me this isn't the first time the kid has made passive aggressive comments or put him down during games. What made it worse is that I tried to speak calmly to the other boy's dad, who also happens to be one of the assistant coaches, and he completely brushed me off with the "that's just how boys are." And it made it clear in his eyes that my kid was the problem. If he can't handle a little constructive criticism, he if he can't handle a little constructive criticism, he flat out refuses to believe his son is doing anything wrong and suggested that I'm being too sensitive or making excuses for my son. I'm torn here. I want to model for my son how to stand up for himself, but I also don't want to escalate a situation that could affect team dynamics or worse, make my son a target. How do I support my kid without becoming that parent? And what do you do when the other parent won't take any responsibility or even acknowledge that their kid might be out of line? Really appreciate any advice you can give a frustrated baseball dad. Hmm.
Whew. I think
Yes.
we've all, whether it's sports or some other team environment, I feel like we've been there before as
Yeah.
parents, right? There's always a moment that something happens when our child has been embarrassed or called out or makes a mistake. And that's a heavy one for the parent, especially ones who want to go just fix the problem and make it all better.
Right.
Um,
And I
Good.
feel like competitive sports are like that. I'm a supporter of team sports. I really feel that there are so many valuable lessons
Mhm.
to be had while playing a team sport. At the same time, it's also an opportunity to experience negative behaviors and try to help your child navigate through those. So for me, I would tell this dad the first step is to just make sure his kid is okay, really.
Mm.
You know, talk about what he felt like, talk about things, maybe give suggestions on what he could say. If he truly was at fault and he felt like he was at fault, I think it's a great opportunity to say to the team, "I'm sorry I let you guys down. I'll do better next time." I mean, teaching your son to take accountability for his actions. And I also think a great lesson about sports is not to dwell. Yes, you made one mistake, move on. Sitting in that moment will, like this dad said, shake a kid's confidence. And I think we've all been there when we've had a negative interaction or something has gone wrong, and we ourselves replay that incident over in our heads and get stuck in that moment. So trying to help your child say, "Yep, you did mess up and that's okay. What are you going to do differently next time? Let's take accountability for your action." I think there are two separate scenarios here, helping your kid and then also dealing with a coach or some values you see on a team that you don't support.
Right. I mean, I first helping your child take accountability for something that they did wrong,
Right,
right? Acknowledging it, not overdoing it, right? Like
right,
you don't want to beat that to death, but we all make mistakes, normalizing, but yep, it was an error and a mistake. And in those scenarios, right, this is how I, as the parent, handled my mistake, maybe
right.
sharing something you did and how you went and took accountability for it. But I don't think that you can force your child at that age, right? As a teenager, young adult, I don't think you can force them to go and say they were sorry. You know what I mean? Like
No,
take
you can't first of
accountability for
all
it, right?
no,
You
you
can make
that's
this
a but it's
suggestion.
a
You
hard
could
lesson. It's definitely a
correct,
hard lesson.
correct.
Maybe I'm not I hope I wasn't implying force your child,
No, no, you
not
weren't.
at
I was
all.
just
It's
trying to put it out there as
yeah, it's definitely
we
a suggestion. Here are some things you can do, and that would be one of them.
yes.
I think it shows listen, for me, I think that shows great leadership
Mhm.
also as a child or as a young adult or as a teen taking accountability. You're right, that was on me. I will do better next time.
Yeah. And maybe using another example, because sometimes when as parents, we use examples of like, "Oh, this happened to me," or whatever, then they kind of discount, but I don't know, maybe find, someone they admire and share a situation with that person where, "Look, there was a mistake made. This is what they did," whether it's in a
Right.
sport book or something, you could pull up on the internet, just some other person that they might look up to
Yeah.
or admire that how they've
There
taken
there are
accountability.
so many examples of that out there of athletes or
Yeah,
role models for our kids who have taken accountability for their actions.
okay.
On the flip side of that, there are athletes,
Who take
grown
0,
professional
right? The opposite, yep.
athletes who have taken 0 accountability for their actions, and that's a great lesson to point out too.
Yeah,
Like, do you see what that person just did? That's what you don't wanna do. You don't blame someone else. You don't blame your team. You don't you're a team, you go through this together. You never single anyone out
yeah,
like that person did.
right.
But I think handling the coach is a completely separate issue than how you handle your child in that moment. So this particular father, I think it's always a sensitive issue when your coach is also a father on the team because as much as people say I'm not favoring my child, I think it's a really hard line to draw between being a dad and being a coach and being able to be unbiased towards your kid. I just think it's a natural
Yeah, I
reaction.
mean, I think you're either super like the hardest or on your own child as the coach, or the flip side, right? Where you think your child is the best
Right,
and the star and want to give them the most playing
right,
time. So yeah, that's a challenging place to
for
be.
sure. But I
Um,
think as a parent, and this particular incident, it was an assistant coach. And I think as a parent, it's okay to say to the head coach or just to put out there, can you just tell me what you're doing to encourage good sportsmanship?
Mhm.
Like, what are you instilling in these boys in terms of their um, support for one another? What does that look like from your end? And then if your values aren't aligning with the head coach or with what they're teaching these boys, I would like to say it's okay to look for another team. I know in reality that
Right.
that is
That
not always an option because these are your boys' friends. They've
yeah.
played together for years. That might not be an option.
Well, that would be an
So,
interesting conversation, right, to have with your child to understand what is their opinion on is that an option, right?
right,
Because as a parent, you might assume, oh, it's their friends. They would never want to leave the team and go somewhere else. But until you have that conversation, all right, what do we see are the options here?
right.
Now we're at this moment where we've tried to talk to the coach or we've given our son advice.
Or daughter.
Or daughter, nothing seems to be changing. What now are our options?
Right.
And maybe, who knows? Maybe the child would bring up the idea of, I think I
Leaving.
might be ready to look at another team, or no way, right? We shouldn't make assumptions as parents without having that conversation and laying all the options on the table.
If you choose to stay on this particular team, I think it's a really, really important discussion to have with your child. What do we value? Like what do you think makes a good teammate? And just because someone is not showing that to you does not mean that you don't show up the same
Mhm.
way for your teammates. You know, you're there. All we can do is be a role model, and you're there to pick up your teammate when they're doing poorly, not putting them down. Even if it's not being reciprocated and it doesn't feel good for you, doesn't change how you show up for your teammates.
Yeah. I think I'm going to steal the let them theory here by Mel Robbins in this situation is
Yeah, it applies for sure.
right. You try your best to articulate where you stand, how you're feeling. You've taken accountability and apologized. But at that moment, whatever the team or the coach is going to do and move forward is on them. And then it's just back to the focus of the child. That's it.
Yeah,
That's all you have.
I
That's all you
like
have.
that.
And as parents, right, to just be supportive of your teenager. If you and the other co-parent want to have conversations in private, right, about how maybe how frustrated, angry, and like you really are, do that in private. I would not
Yeah,
do it in
it's
with
not a
your child
conversation.
or
Yeah,
in
in
front
front of your
because all
kid.
you're going to do is give your child more negative,
Ammunition
you
or
know,
right, negative
negative
feelings about the
reactions. And
team.
who knows? Maybe they'll move past it faster than the parent. That would
Right.
be like the ideal
That
scenario.
that often is the case. It's
At the
usually
right?
harder for the parents to let go than for the kids to let go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope that this was helpful for our 2 listeners.
I like that.
Um,
Well, for our 2 listeners who wrote the letters, hopefully this is
correct.
helpful
Sorry,
for
I didn't
all
wanna
of our
say
listeners.
reel that back in. Reel that back in. I did not mean our 2 listeners, but
All
for
of our listeners, for sure.
yes, I would hope that these scenarios were helpful, and we truly appreciate our listeners that do write in with questions and scenarios.
Yes, and I actually like this episode. I think this is a great way to go. So
Yeah.
send us your
So,
stories, send
yeah,
us your
we want
scenarios.
more. We want more. Reach out to us. info@parentcoachesunleashed.com. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and we want to hear from you.
Thanks for being with us today. Have a great
Thanks for
one.
listening. Thank you for listening to this episode of Parent Coaches Unleashed with Carrie and Jessica. Together, we can raise the next generation of independent, capable, and compassionate young adults.
We encourage you to send us an email with questions and feedback to info@parentcoachesunleashed.com. Please remember, you are not alone on this parenting journey.